We're in Manhattan filming for the Hamilton College Jazz Archive. My name is Monk Rowe, and I'm very pleased to have pianist Richard Wyands with me today. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
You know, I'm pleased to say that a lot of musicians, when your name came up, I said, I'm going to see Richard Wyands, I hope, soon. And they always had, oh, Richard, he is such a great guy and such a marvelous player.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad I'm thought of that way.
You are, indeed. And your role as an accompanist is oftentimes mentioned a lot. You've worked with some great singers.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Who have been your own personal favorites?
Well, I spent a brief stint with, a brief stint with Ella Fitzgerald, and she is one of my favorites, all-time favorite. I worked with Carmen McRae, and she's also been one of my favorites. I've never worked with Sarah Vaughan, but she is one of my favorites. And I can go on and on for female vocalists, but those are about the 3 or 4 top singers that I really dig.
Did they seem to want different things from their piano player, from one singer to the next?
Well, not necessarily. It's hard to remember. I don't know, I've played for so many singers throughout the years. Carmen was very easy to work with, extremely. She just wanted to be very relaxed. Ella, she just wanted you to swing. She wanted the rhythm section to swing. That was her thing. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that.
There you go.
You know what? And some singers would like you to play, or would like me to play a little more single note things behind them, as opposed to chords, or a mixture of both. It all depends. A lot of singers are different. You know, they have different ideas of what they want to hear. So,
have you ever had occasion where you might be getting, I don't know if experimental is the right word, but if you're playing some chord substitutions that the singer might not like where you're going with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? And how do they let you know?
Well, I remember I had this experience with Ella, and I was appearing in my hometown, San Francisco, at the Fairmont Hotel. I was playing some kind of an ad lib rubato thing behind her, and I usually play it the same way, note for note, every night, every time we do it. This time I made a little tiny alteration, not enough to throw her off, but just a little. And she turned around, looked at me and said, "Oh," and kept on singing. I said, "Uh-oh, I better not do that again. I'll just play it straight." They want to hear the same, a lot of singers want to hear the same thing. They don't want you to go too far away from it.
Yeah.
They want to hear the same thing every night, more or less.
That takes a certain kind of discipline for yourself then.
Definitely.
It almost puts more pressure on you because it's like almost like doing a classical thing. I've got to do this as if it was written.
I know.
Yeah. Was San Francisco, Oakland a good musical scene? You grew up in the late 30s and 40s. You were a teenager and so forth. Was there a lot of music around for you to hear?
Well, there was on the radio. Of course, in the late 30s, early 40s, I was still in school. I was too young to go to nightclubs. But fortunately, my mother really dug jazz, and she would take me to these dance halls. And I heard Count Basie, Lester Young, that band. I heard Jimmy Lunsford with, this is somewhere around 1940. And I heard Basie at the World's Fair in San Francisco, live. and in '39,
Wow.
and Benny Goodman, several other bands, and they would allow minors to go into these dance halls, if they were accompanied by their parent. So my mother, she would take me, and I never will forget that. She was so nice about that. And then I went to the theaters. In those days, they had the theater shows, like the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco, the Paramount in New York, and some theaters in L.A. But I used to go to the Golden Gate Theater, and I saw many, many bands in the stage show, a review. Saw Duke many times with Jimmy Blanton.
That was important, eh?
Very important, because even then my ears were tuned to bass players, because I'd never heard a bass player play like that before. And at that time, that
Yeah.
is.
What was so different about what he was doing for your ears?
Oh, well, his entire approach was a lot different than most of the bass players of the time, of that era. He played good lines, great lines. Not too many double notes, like ding, 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 ding. I call those double notes. He used the entire instrument. He'd play high, low, and so forth. And most of the bass players in those days, I mean, I'm just a kid now analyzing this, but they didn't play like that.
So you started on piano did you take classical lessons?
Yes. Yeah, I started when I was about 7 or 8. And I played, I almost was a prodigy, actually. That's how they were billing me. But I finally became disinterested in classical music. I didn't put it down, but I really wanted to play jazz, really. So I finally stopped playing. I didn't actually stop playing classical music, but I decided I'd get a teacher who could teach me how to play jazz, if that was possible.
Yeah.
And I did. I found one, and he was a jazz musician in San Francisco, and his name was Wilbert Barranco. And he lived in my neighborhood. I only had to walk 3 or 4 blocks to home, and he'd give me these lessons. So I took a crash course, about 8 months, and I was going to junior high school at this time, by the way. So, and it was good. He was very good. After 8 months, he said, "Well, this is the end of the course. You got it. You're on your own."
Okay.
8 months.
Okay. What did you know by the end of 8 months? I mean, chord symbols and the concept.
I could read chord symbols, and he showed me how to analyze chords. A lot of the sheet music you bought in those days didn't have chord symbols. They just had those guitar things. So I'd have to analyze from the sheet the chord, and it was very good.
Yeah. Did he get into any kind of piano styles with you to show the options?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He, well, I think his favorite, judging from the way he played, was Art Tatum. He played a lot of notes, and he wrote out a list of piano players for me to listen to and buy records. And Art Tatum was at the top of the list. Nat King Cole, Earl Hines, Fats Waller, Count Basie. No, I don't think Count Basie was on the list, but I became attached to Count Basie.
Yeah.
Anyhow, oh yes. He was plinking and planking, but he could actually stride. He could play stride piano on some of those early records, and I recognized that even as a kid. Fats Waller was one of my favorites. I loved him. My parents had some old Fats Waller records, and I used to play them on an old gramophone when you put a needle in, it looks like something that you sew with or something.
Oh, right. Almost like a
Victrola.
Victrola.
Victrola. And that was my first record player.
Uh-huh.
But I loved Fats. And, a neighbor who lived right next door, she had a player piano.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to go over there, pull out the rolls. She'd show me how to put them on the piano. And she had these great Fats Waller and James P. Johnson piano rolls. You know, I used to sit there, I'd pump the piano, and watch those notes. I said, oh my God. There must be two piano players playing at once. Couldn't be one.
Yeah.
They were great. Oh.
And those things were made actually right from, didn't the fellas play a special piano and they
I think
punched
so.
those rolls somehow? So.
I never knew how they were
Yeah.
made, but I guess so.
That was the real thing.
They had holes in them, you know. The
Yeah.
roll had these holes, but I never did find out how they were made.
Right.
I got a kick out of that. Anyhow, I decided that was it. I wanted to be a jazz pianist.
Mm-hmm. So by the time you were going into high school, you kind of had a direction.
Well, I don't know. I ran into a roadblock. Junior high school, I decided I wanted to be a drummer. Now, I'd already been playing classical music and a little jazz. And for some reason, my cousin was a drummer. And he loaned me some of his drums. And my parents weren't too happy about that idea, but I took lessons. Actually, I took lessons from Johnny Otis, who lived in the neighborhood.
Really, Johnny Otis?
Johnny Otis.
Yeah.
At that time, his name was Johnny Valley Otis. And I went to school with his younger brother, but I studied with him. And he was a very good drummer, you know, before he decided to be a band leader. And
Yeah.
all right. I played drums in junior high school. I played in the orchestra, the band, marching band, and the director, he liked me especially because being a pianist and I studied, I was a little better reader than sight reader than the other drummers. So he gave me the choice. I was the number one drummer.
Number one snare drummer?
No, I had to play a whole set of drums. Plus, I played in the dance band, too.
Okay.
Junior high school dance band, which was kind of interesting. I didn't own a set of drums. My parents wouldn't allow. They said, no, we're not going to buy you a set of drums. Forget it. So I had to use the school drums, and I had to use one of these big street drums as a bass drum. I had a foot pedal that was a heel pedal.
Really? Oh my.
And I thought it was glamorous, you know, the girls were all smiling and everything at me. But later I found out being a drummer wasn't so great after all, because at the end of the dance, I'm trying to take down the drums and everything. In the meantime, everybody's gone. You know, the musicians and all, everyone is gone. I'm still fooling around with these drums, and I had to carry them all the way across the schoolyard. So I don't know about this.
The piano's starting to look good again.
But I didn't play drums in high school because there was no orchestra. There was just a marching band for the football games and so forth. But so I didn't play anything in high school, except maybe in my senior year, some of the students organized a little jazz combo, and they were searching frantically for a jazz pianist. So somehow they found me. You know? So we played for the variety shows that the high school had, and we went around to hospitals, veterans hospitals, and played. Like, this is 1945, so the war was still on.
Right.
And
were you looking at military service down the road too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you in fact get
No,
drafted?
no, I didn't.
Okay.
I graduated from high school when I was 16. So actually, I was too young for military service for World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college and played drums again in college.
Really?
Yeah. But there were so many drummers. There must have been 10 drummers who were trying to play in the orchestra and the band. But they gave me a chance. I'd play cymbals sometimes, but standing up there counting bars, gee.
Big moment. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. But fortunately, one of the professors decided to organize a jazz department.
Mm-hmm.
There were no teachers who knew how to teach anything about jazz, so we
Yeah.
had to do it on our own, the students
Right.
themselves. So it was pretty good.
Yeah. Post-World War II, bebop was kind of percolating actually here. Did it make its way out to your ears
Yeah, slowly.
slowly?
By the way of records, of course, we used to order records in San Francisco at this little record store. Sometimes it would take 2 or 3 weeks for the records to arrive. These are 78s, of course. And around 1945, I started hearing these records by Bird and Dizzy Gillespie and other people. So I'd go to the record store and order them. We'd wait patiently for the records to arrive, for each 78 record. I heard some of these broadcasts late at night from New York and Chicago and Los Angeles of various bands. And I heard Boyd Rayburn's band. I know Dizzy recorded with Boyd Rayburn. And I think he made some of the engagements. I'm not sure about that. But I heard them on the radio, and oh, it's great. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but while I was going to college, I went to San Francisco State University, by the way, and I worked around the Bay Area, various groups. I worked in strip joints. I'm paying my way through college. I'm working my way through college. I saved up enough money to buy a car because the school was in San Francisco, but I actually lived in Berkeley.
Uh-huh.
So I had to cross the bridge every day, so I needed a car. So I worked at night until sometimes 2 a.m. in the morning, go home, get a little sleep, go back to school, go to school. And it's a little rough, but I was pretty young then. It didn't bother me. If I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, it didn't matter.
What kind of tunes at that time worked in a strip club?
Oh, mostly standards. We got away with that.
Yeah.
Some of the typical strip type tunes, but this was way back then in the 40s. We're talking about late 40s, I guess. And some of the strippers had their own music. They brought in some of these old stock arrangements. It was only a 4-piece band, 4 or 5-piece band. How much could we play?
Right.
But, and the piano would be stacked with music. I remember that much. And the music had to be continuous. The band never stopped playing. So we'd take our breaks individually.
Really?
Really, yeah.
Oh,
That's right.
I'll be darned.
No intermissions. No. Because there were a lot of strippers, some of them had some of the clubs had maybe 10. And so they'd come out.
So from, like, what time would you start?
8 sometimes.
8 o'clock until sometimes 2 a.m.?
Yeah.
And one by one, the guys would get up and
Yeah.
take a little break, 15 minutes or so. It must have been, I mean, so weird. It's like, okay, no, there's going to be no drums for a little while.
That's right.
And then the piano goes.
And no
so
piano.
You'd have bass and sax and drums maybe or something like that.
Well, sometimes one of the horn players could double on piano.
Oh,
He could play
okay.
enough to get by,
Yeah.
you know, to play some chords.
That's interesting.
But
You probably got to see all kinds of acts, too.
quite a few. Oh, man, some of these acts. I've worked in places, in fact, I worked in a strip joint in New York. One of my early days in New York, I guess it wasn't called a strip joint, but we had these B-girls, but they doubled as singers. They were hustling drinks at the bar, but they would sing. So I remember one club I worked, there must have been 10 singers, or 10 B-girls. And some of them could sing very well, very well. They had their music. And, it was a little rough though, playing one singer after another, you know. They'd sing a couple of tunes, then they'd go back to the bar. Meantime, the band is still playing. I think in this joint, we did get a break, though. I don't remember the name of the club, but I remember doing that. And,
Well, that's paying some dues.
oh, yeah, well, it gets worse.
It gets worse? What's worse than that?
Well, I used to make a lot of club dates, or casuals, as they were known in some areas. And the pianos were in terrible shape.
Oh.
Terrible. They'd be out of tune. The ivory would be half on. And in fact, they were so far out of tune that the musicians, the horn players, couldn't tune up. So I would have to transpose.
You have to play in a different key than the rest of the band.
That's right.
Oh, God.
It's very frustrating. Or the pedals would be broken off, the sustaining pedal broken, all sorts of things. Oh, boy. You're talking about dues.
Yeah. It's almost like you want to go back and carry those drums now.
That's right.
At least you know what you're going to be dealing with.
Pianos were so bad. In some of these halls, dance halls, they had little spinets, which you know what that is. That's like just a piece of furniture. It's not much of an instrument. I saw Nat King Cole play on a spinet. I did one of his dances, like the band that played opposite him, and he had his trio then. And he's playing this little spinet. I wish I'd had a camera, a picture of that, but
Physically.
I was smiling too.
Really? Yeah.
All the pianos that we had to play.
I would think physically it'd be really very demanding on your wrists and your...
It is.
Yeah.
Right.
To get any sound out of it at all.
You can't attack it too
Yeah.
heavily, or you break your arms.
Did you learn anything in your own playing from the dancers, from watching people dance?
You mean
Not
on the dance
necessarily-
floor?
Yes, on the dance floor, not the strippers I'm talking about now, but I'm talking about at the dances.
Rhythm, time. In those days, the Lindy, or jitterbugging, was very popular, and most of the dancers had very good time. All musicians don't have good time necessarily, and I used to watch some of the dancers. You know, I used to pat my foot kind of loud in those days. You know, some of the musicians, especially the drummers, would say, "Stop it! Stop it! Don't you patting your foot too loud. I'm the drummer." You know. But I learned a lot. You're right. I learned a lot by just watching the dancers. However, in some cases, the little violence would break out and fights would start. And the next thing you know, it's gotten ugly on the dance floor. I've seen dances. I used to go to dances to see all these big bands, Cab Calloway, Basie, Duke. And they'd be held in these big arenas, large arenas like Madison Square Garden, only not quite that large. And after a couple of hours and a few drinks, oh boy, it would get pretty wild. Start throwing chairs and
The combat zone, huh?
oh yeah.
Well, were the audiences integrated for those kinds of occasions?
No.
No.
No. Nope.
Would the Ellington Band, for instance, play one place for a white audience and then play somewhere else for a black audience?
Right. I remember in Oakland, there was a dance hall, very nice dance hall. It was called Sweet's Ballroom. All the bands appeared there. But for the Afro-Americans, there was only one night, and that was a Monday night. And the rest of the nights were for the whites. And that's how it was in most of the places. My mother took me to Sweet's Ballroom a few times. Sometimes some fights would break out there too. Oh boy! But we're talking about World War II. Things were, I don't know. There were a lot of servicemen around, and if you can imagine, no one knew how long things were going to be okay.
Yeah.
But fortunately, nothing ever happened to me.
I can imagine, are they getting shore leave or something and letting off?
Yeah, you see a lot of drunken servicemen, they go crazy.
Yeah.
Quite a few of them, and a lot didn't, of course. When I went to these dances, I would just stand up in front of the bandstand and watch. I wasn't dancing or anything. And that's...
How did your mother feel about you making a career of music?
First, she didn't like it. She didn't think that I would really get into it anyhow. She figured, well, he'll probably change his mind and decide, go into something else, like become a doctor, school teacher or something, But the fact that I started out doing World War II, or the latter part of World War II, there was a shortage of musicians around, jazz musicians. Most of them were in the service. So while I was in high school, I was recruited, actually, to play. And at that time, I wasn't that professional. I didn't think so. I joined the union when I was 16. And I had some sponsors who took care of me. They called me up and they'd take me out to their jobs, and I would play, and they'd bring me home. That satisfied my mother now. She was happy about that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure she and my father were thinking about, well, the old stories about musicians doing this and doing that, and drugs and all sorts of things, and womanizers, and, all the, I call them cliches, I guess.
Yes.
She got used to it. When I graduated from college, I decided I didn't want to be a school teacher. I decided I was going to play nightclubs, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she saw I was making money, so she said, well, maybe this isn't so bad after all.
Got your own car.
Right.
Yeah. I understand you played at the Blackhawk,
Right.
backing up different musicians that would come in.
Right.
Must have been a good experience.
It was. Because I got a chance, even if I wasn't backing them up. If I didn't back them up, I was playing intermission piano. or with a trio or duo. There was a bass player named, well, he's still there, Vernon Alley. He and I worked at the Blackhawk either with a quintet, quartet, or a duo, opposite these big name acts, like Oscar Peterson, Max Roach, George Shearing, long list. And it's a great experience because I got a chance to sit there every night and watch and listen to all of these great musicians. And sometimes they'd invite me up to play with them. You know?
Making future contacts.
Oh, yeah. I figured one of these days I'll get to New York. You know, it would be a good idea to make a good impression. So, and it worked because when I finally came to New York, I looked up some of the musicians that I'd met out there, and they helped me get started. But one of the most interesting experiences I ever went through in my life was at the Blackhawk. I played opposite Art Tatum, and I was just playing solo piano. I played 20 on, and he'd play 40. It was 40-20 in those days.
Yeah.
And, you know, Art Tatum, wow, it's... But I got to know him. I got to talk to him. And I knew I couldn't compete with him. No one could. You know, but he would talk to me while he was playing. I'd sit right by the piano as close as I could because some nights there weren't that many people in there for some reason or other. He was, I don't know, maybe too heavy for the average listener. The musicians would be there, but anyhow, I'd sit right next to him, and he would tell me what he was about to do. You know, he'd say, "Richard, I'm going into B major, and then I'm going to do this." You know, because the audience could care less; they had no idea whether that meant anything or not. What an experience! Oh boy. But I didn't feel too bad when it was my turn to play, though. I felt, well, just do what you do, and that's all.
Don't try to
you can't.
even get close to what he
No,
did.
you can't do that. You'll shift into another gear, and the next thing you know, it's out.
Oh, that must have been fabulous.
It was. I did that for 3 weeks opposite him.
Was there certain things he would do the same from night to night?
I noticed that.
Yeah.
Right. He had his little crypts and things he would play, you know. Not that he had to do that, but he did.
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of musicians, pianists, would play it.
Yeah. Well, if the
Same
singers want
thing.
the same thing every night, I guess the musicians can play things that they know are going to work too.
Well, believe it or not, there were a few singers who didn't want to hear the same thing every night. I mean, they wouldn't say it, but you could tell by the way they were singing, they wouldn't even sing the same tunes the same way every night, which was interesting. But in those days, I could do that. I could memorize things quickly. I could play the same thing every night, note for note. You know, and it's a little difficult now. I don't want to do that, really, unless it's an arrangement. But the solos, oh no, I can't play the same notes.
Yeah. So you finally decided to come to New York. Was it a conscious decision, or did it just kind of?
Well, I had been thinking about it. In 1954, I was still working at the Blackhawk. It was like a steady gig, and I was able to take a vacation and come back to the job. That's how nice these owners were at the Blackhawk. They liked me that much, and so I decided I would take a trip east. So I went to Chicago, and then I went to New York, stayed a week, came back to Chicago, went to all the clubs in Chicago. And then I thought to myself, well, I don't think I'm ready yet for New York. Plus, I had a steady job in San Francisco. And I don't know, I didn't like living in New York. California is a lot different than New York. And I saw all these old buildings. And so I went back. But finally, I got tired of San Francisco, and I went out on the road with Ella for a short time. Came back, and then a friend of mine by the name of Wyatt Ruther, he's a bass player. He was living in near Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. He had a little gig in a jazz club, and he asked me if I wanted to come out there and join him. And I said, yeah. I had no idea how long this was going to last, to go that far, 3,000 miles, and then work one weekend is over. But I took a chance, got in my car, drove mile after mile.
Wow. To Ottawa, huh?
Well, the job actually was in Hull, Quebec, which is just across the river in the French, in Quebec. A nice little jazz club. So I stayed there for about 9 or 10 months. But it turned out to be a singer's showcase. It started out as a jazz club, but then they started bringing in a lot of singers, just one after the other.
So you became like the house.
Yeah, that's what we were, the house trio.
Yeah.
Then we became a quartet. But we played mostly for singers.
Yeah.
Johnny Mathis was even there.
Wow.
This was before he was...
Before he was Johnny
yeah,
Mathis.
yeah. He was just doing a single then. He didn't even have an accompanist. So he was trying to sing jazz then. He really was. He was. Yeah, he was doing a lot of stuff. Oh, but I played for so many singers there. Now, this is after Ella Fitzgerald. I don't know. There were so many singers.
Yeah.
It's a good experience. Very good experience.
People in Quebec, any different than what you were used to?
No, they were French Canadians. They were all speaking French.
Okay, that's one big thing.
Wow. In fact, the people that lived around us, they were all French Canadians, so they would speak to us in French, and we couldn't speak French. So they said, okay, you're going to have to go to night school. You're going to have to learn how to speak French if you're going to live here with us. So I did. Wyatt Ruther and I, we went to night school to try to learn French. And we did pretty good. But right across the river is Ontario, so that was a different scene. Ottawa was altogether different. That's the English side. So that's... I don't remember there being any nightclubs or jazz clubs in Ottawa, but most of the jazz clubs were on the French side for some reason or other. I don't know why. But I stayed up there for 9 or 10 months. I made a lot of friends, and it was a new life. I really dug it. I really did. There were a lot of Europeans living there also, and they were pretty hip. And but then things started to go downhill. We were getting bored with the whole situation, and so finally, it collapsed.
Oh.
New Year's Eve was the end.
Oh.
Yeah, we started. Things just went downhill. So I was ready to leave anyhow, so I didn't care. You can just live there so long. There was not much competition. There were a few musicians who could play, but
that you weren't being challenged.
No challenges, no, no. And I needed that badly because.
Well, you certainly could get that here. Right?
Oh, can you? Can you ever get it here? I found out, that's for sure. But anyhow, I went on the road with Carmen. I left Ottawa with Carmen. Went to Chicago and a few other places with her, and that was nice. Ended up in New York, so she decided to stay in New York for a little while. And I made some things with her around the New York area. And then I left. I was supposed to be going back to California, but I decided not to. So I had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Late 50s then?
this is 58.
Uh-huh.
Winter of February of 58. And the union wouldn't allow me to work because I came in on a transfer. In those days you had to transfer or either resign from your original local and join outright. But I didn't want to do that, so I had to wait 3 to 6 months before I could work anywhere. You know, they let me work a few places, you know, in Harlem and Brooklyn or something, but
Nothing steady, right?
no,
Yeah.
not steady, no.
Has that changed?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were very powerful at the time, weren't they? The union.
Very powerful. They would call to make sure that you were still living at whatever address you gave them. Make sure you didn't go out on the road with a band or whatever. You had to stay in the city.
Man.
Those were more dues.
Did you find a day gig, something to tide yourself over?
No.
Oh.
Believe it or not, I
Good
didn't.
for you.
I don't know how I managed that because it got so bad that I had to sell my car, you know, which I hated. I said, oh no, I had to sell my car. But the parking situation was so bad in New York. As
Well,
I had so many tickets.
Some things never
tickets.
change, huh?
Right. I didn't understand the alternate side of the street parking, you know, like I read the signs, but I said, why am I getting all these tickets? So finally I said, well, okay, just sell the car. You know, public transportation was good, the subway, you know, buses. So I did. So I got a little money for that. You know. Didn't last long, though.
Do you remember what you were paying for your rent back then?
$10 a week
$10 a week.
for a room.
Is it like a rooming house, a boarding house?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
$10 a week. So that wasn't too bad.
But you probably didn't have a piano to play on either, did you?
Well, no. But I was staying, I remember I was staying up in Harlem near the old polo grounds. And there was a jazz club right across the street from where I was living. So I went over there. I used to go over there in the afternoon, so I talked to the owner. I spoke to him. I said, he had a room upstairs where he had private parties and things. There was a piano up there. And I said, could I come in the afternoon, you know, practice? He said, sure, you know. And so I did that. But the next thing I knew, there were several other piano players out there practicing, you know. I said, oh, wait a minute. The name of that club was Brankers. I never will forget it. It was sort of an organ house downstairs in the main room. They featured organ players. So there was no piano in there, but at least that helped, you know.
Yeah.
I had to practice. So I stayed there a while, and I finally went to Philadelphia. And the union finally allowed me to leave town or do whatever I wanted to do. But
You started working with this great list of fellas, Jerome Richardson and Mingus, Roy Haynes.
right.
Were these like one-night things, kind of pickup gigs?
Well, first of all, Jerome Richardson, I knew him in California.
That's right, he came from there too.
In fact, we both lived in Berkeley, and I lived around the corner from him. So he got some groups together, and we'd play weekends, whatever. And so I knew Jerome. Roy Haynes, I met him in California when he was with Sarah Vaughan. So when I came to New York, we sort of hooked up together and worked some different things, trios, quartets. And Mingus, I knew him from California. In fact, I worked with him in California, in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
He organized a small group, a quartet, and we opened up a new jazz club in San Francisco. It didn't last long, though. The club flopped quickly. Yeah. I mean, a couple of records with Mingus out there.
1959, late 50s, early 60s, rock and roll was starting to obviously be on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Were you required to play some of that kind of music on club dates and so forth?
Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of things would you play?
Like, it was rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
I played for some of these, we called them bird groups because...
Called them bird groups? Oh.
Because they had names like the Orioles and the this and the that. But
yeah.
You know, that's why we call them bird groups. But they had rhythm and blues. I played for some of them. In San Francisco even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Jerome said he sometimes sang and did some of that kind of thing too.
You know, jink, 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 jink. But it wasn't going to last forever, so you made those too.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in San Francisco, I worked with Mel Torme. He came in, and so we got a band together to play for him. And of course, he played piano also and drums. That was interesting. He wrote all of his own arrangements. Yeah, and some of them were a little difficult.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote them in difficult keys.
Oh.
You would think he being able good range he had, pretty good.
Yeah.
It didn't matter a half step this way or a half step that way, but he wrote them. Oh boy, but it was okay.
Uh-huh.
Band was good, you know.
Got familiar with the black notes again.
Oh yeah, the band was good. They could read anything. So, Cab Calloway, I worked with him in San Francisco.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, do you recall a first recording date in New York that you made?
In New York. I think it was with Jerome Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Roman with Richardson for Prestige.
Uh-huh.
And that particular date, I think the coordinator was somebody by the name of, I can't think of his name. But he got me on a lot of other dates for Prestige. That one date I did with Jerome did it, really.
Excellent.
I got more calls from Prestige to do more dates. And as a result, I did this date with Etta Jones, you know, the Don't Go to Strangers.
There you go.
And that luckily, fortunately, turned out pretty good.
It's curious when a record like that takes off. I'm wondering, when you recorded it, did it make a particular impression on you?
No.
No.
Well, usually I would go to a date and I would play it, and then I didn't think any more about it because it seems like it would take them forever to release the record anyhow. By the time they released it, I'd forgotten all about it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I know we did a good job on that, considering in those days, you just go in the studio. There was no rehearsal. The A&R man, as they were known in those days, would bring in some sheets of music. And in the case of a vocalist, you may have to transpose the sheet and make up the arrangements on top of it. in 6 hours.
They could do an album in 6
Yeah,
hours.
album,
Wow. That seems...
6 hours
Well,
or less. And that's a lot of pressure to put on.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. We did it though. Everybody did.
so you'd be at the piano and the singer would come over and let's try this and, well, can we do it?
Well, the singer usually would have. Well, in the case of Etta Jones, she knew the tunes,
Yeah.
and she knew the keys. I think she did, and we would get it together and decide on the changes quickly, very quickly. Figure out an intro, endings, and the solo, and that would be it. Some of those things we did were just one take. I think Don't Go to Strangers was just one take.
Oh. Do you recall who was also in the rhythm section?
Oh, yeah. Roy Haynes, George Duvivier, Skeeter Best on guitar, and Frank West was on tenor and flute on that record.
Yeah.
And George was very good, George Duvivier. He really organized it good for that day. It really came off very good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he just said, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'd make up some intros, and, you know, we all made our little contributions, and before you knew it, 5 hours was up, or 6.
And what did a record date pay back then?
I don't remember. It's hard to say.
Would that be a thing where you would go to the union office at some later date to
And pick up the check?
Pick up that check?
Right. They wouldn't let you, the union wouldn't send you a notice or anything that your check or any checks were there unless you had so many, like some of the musicians who did recording work every day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they would call you perhaps, but usually you'd have to call them. And usually, no, we don't have anything for you yet. No. Oh, and 3 or 4 months had gone by, it seemed like. You know.
Uh-huh.
So
God. Might be easy to forget who actually...
that's why I forgot what we played, you know.
Yeah, right.
So one day I was working in Minton's Playhouse up in Harlem, and on the jukebox I heard this record, Don't Go to Strangers. And it was Etta Jones. I said, that sounds familiar. You know, I thought to myself, this is months later, and it was a hit. You know, I didn't even know it was a hit at the time. And I checked it out, and sure enough, that was the record I was on. You know, I said, wow, hit? Of course, the record company didn't tell me that. No, man. But
And it didn't make any difference what money you were going to make off it either, did it?
no, there was no money, no
Yeah.
royalties.
Right.
No. Well, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
They made a lot of money on that record.
Mm-hmm.
One of the few hits, you know, that was a million copy hit, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I know
they say.
she was still singing it in the latter part of her career, too.
I know she was.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
Yeah, well, I saw her. In fact, I was on her last final recording session.
Was that the tribute
to Billy,
to Billy? Yeah.
or whatever it was called, Lady Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a pretty good record. Have you heard it? Any of it?
Yeah.
And she was singing very well. She loved to sing. So I think that I was on her first hit. It wasn't her first record, but the first hit, and then her last.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Can you tell me about Roland Kirk? A little bit about him.
Well, I worked with him a few times,
Yeah.
and then I did a record with him We Free Kings, I believe it's called. On a recording session, that was the first time that I'd ever heard him or seen him. I'd
Oh my.
heard about him, but I'd never heard him before. I saw pictures of him playing 3 saxophones or 3 instruments at once, but I didn't know really what to expect. So, in fact, I think Jerome Richardson got me on that date somehow. Quincy Jones was still living in New York, and I think he was running the jazz section for Mercury Records.
Mm-hmm.
So I showed up, and there were 2 bass players that showed up. Ray Brown was one of them, and Art Davis was the other. So there was a mistake, so Ray told Art, no, you make it, Charlie Persip was the drummer. But I still didn't know what to expect, so Roland Kirk Rosson, as he was known, he passed out some music, or had somebody pass it out, and we ran it over and recorded it. But to hear him play those instruments like that, I said, wow, what? Man, this is really... And it was no fluke, it was no novelty. He was serious about that, and he played those instruments, It came out pretty good. I couldn't believe it, but I was only on one side of the record. The other side was a different rhythm section.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Hank Jones and, I forgot who else, but...
He was quite a force of nature almost.
Yes. But I worked with him at the Vanguard a few times, and it was loose, very loose.
Yes.
He was he was something. That's all I can say. Oh boy, blowing his whistles and things, and boy, his mind was going a mile a minute.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like you were on a roller coaster or something with
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
But it was happy.
Yeah.
I was very happy. I was smiling all the time.
Excellent. What's your favorite thing to do out of the things you've done? You've done some Broadway shows. You've worked with all these great people. Is it possible to pin down what you really like to do, whether solo piano or small group?
Oh, now I'd say small group, trio, duo even, and solo.
Mm-hmm.
I played in a few big bands, not that many, but big band is really not my thing. It's pianist, unless he's the leader, really gets buried there somewhere.
Right.
It's, there's not much room for solos. Actually, solo or duo, trio, and horns. I like that, a quartet on down. No larger than a quartet, because everybody gets the chance to play in a quartet.
Yeah.
And that way, in a quartet I can comp, which I like to do. I really enjoy comping, just laying it down.
Who's on your first call list of bass players? If you line up a duo gig and, who can I call for this? Who do you like to get?
Well, I like to get Lyle Atkinson. I usually call him first when I get some work. We have a good rapport. We've known each other and played together for many, many years, and he has good ears, good facility, and he knows a lot of tunes. And that really means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I love him. And he's very dependable. I don't have to worry about him being late or not showing or something. He's always there, always. And that means a lot. I don't know, there are a lot of people I've thought about through the years, bass players, it's hard to say. Record dates, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Most of my records I've used Peter Washington and Kenny Washington.
They're quite popular.
The Washington guys.
Yeah, they're quite popular these days, aren't
They're
they?
very popular.
Yeah. I understand that you used to play on top of the World Trade Center, the club up there.
Windows on the World.
Yeah. Is that a steady gig for you for a while?
It was. I was doing a thing with a trio, guitar, bass, and piano, no drums. Al Gaffa on guitar and Dave Shapiro on bass. So we played anything we wanted to play. People didn't care what we played. It was supposed to be jazz, though.
Yeah.
So we played everything. We would just bring music and play things we had never played before. No one was listening anyhow.
Uh-huh.
No.
But you had the view.
Oh, yeah. It was sort of a hard gig because we played short sets. I think we played something like 8 sets a night. We might play a 10-minute set, then we play a 20-minute set, and that went on. It made the night so long, you know. And there was no place to go. We'd have a booth, you know, that we usually sit in, and sometimes if it got crowded in there, we'd have to vacate the booth and just stroll, walk around. One night I tried to take the elevator and go all the way down to the street level to go to the bar and have a drink, and straight back, and I didn't make it on time.
Really?
No, I couldn't. I said, okay, you can't do that anymore. The prices were so high in the bar, you know, and they didn't give us any kind of a discount or anything. So,
has your life changed at all since September 11th?
Yes, I'd say so. My feelings. I thought about when I was working at the Trade Center. I mean, the Windows on the World, which was in the late 70s, actually. I thought to myself, I wonder if that had happened when I was working there, or whenever.
Yeah.
I became so familiar with those elevators, up, down, you know, express. And I didn't know anyone. We worked at night, you know. The offices were closed, you know, at nighttime, most of them. And it's different, that's all I can say. I watched it on TV. I get up early every morning, and I hadn't have been watching the news, and they switched to this scene of the first plane, right after the first plane hit, and then they thought it was an accident, you know, a small plane or something. And then in disbelief, I watched this other plane. This is live now, the second plane. I said, oh my God. My wife is still there. I told her, come look at this, come look at this. And right away I thought that it was an attack of some kind. It was no accident. Mm-hmm. So I just sat there all day, for the rest of the day, watching the show that over and over and over, and what happened. Buildings collapsing and all of that. It was a low point, I'll have to say, in my life. Mm-hmm. I haven't been down there to see Ground Zero. Yeah. But it's that whole area down there. Wow.
Kenny Burrell, you guys were a number of
Yeah.
good years, huh?
But had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Right. We traveled coast to coast driving. Those days we didn't fly, we drove.
Uh-huh.
And usually everyone in the group, it was usually a quartet, and everybody would drive, It's a lot of driving. But all the instruments and the luggage, drums, bass, everything in a station wagon. And we're driving coast to coast. But we didn't drive straight through because there were a lot of places that in between, like we'd stop Kansas City, Oklahoma City, and even in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
a few jazz clubs. So it wasn't a straight shot. We didn't have to just drive. But we'd go to California and stay 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be enough clubs between Los Angeles, San Francisco to stay. We'd stay 2 weeks at least in each club.
Yeah.
And Los Angeles had quite a few clubs in those days, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 clubs, and we'd make them. I worked at Shelley's Manhole, and opposite Shelley and his men. It was a lot of fun. It really was. Those were the days. Oh boy. And
You've gone through your whole life as a musician. It's saying something. It's saying something.
I've never done anything else
Uh-huh.
since I was in high school. I had some jobs that I did when I was summer jobs.
Yeah, sure.
I worked in a shipyard and all sorts of factories, canneries. But this was just during the summer.
Right.
I hadn't planned on doing that forever.
Yep.
And but I haven't done anything else since. Nothing. Got kind of close, though. I thought to myself.
Yeah, what were the
tough?
tough years? Or
All
is
of
it
them. No,
all
I'm
of
only
them?
kidding.
Yeah.
No. The first year, of course, waiting for the union to give me a break.
Yeah.
Mid-'60s, I guess. I think that's one reason why I went out on the road with Kenny Burrell,
Uh-huh.
because things were kind of slow
Yeah.
here in the city. So I decided, well, this will give you a chance to get to California and see your family.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father were still there then, and other relatives and friends. So I'd come to California maybe twice a year, which was great, And but all of that's over with. There aren't many clubs.
Yeah.
Minnesota, we even went to.
Wow. I hope it wasn't in the winter.
Oh no winter. Oh, no.
Well, I promised I would play a couple pieces that you're on and see if you can recall the session.
Oh, I know what that is. That's with Oliver Nelson.
Yes.
Right.
Nice record.
Those were nice. We got through those quickly. I remember we used to do them second take at least, no further than that on all
Really?
these things that I did with Oliver.
Yeah.
But he wrote in such a way that it wasn't that complicated, it wasn't difficult. We used to do it. I hate to have to do a lot of takes in recording sessions.
Yeah.
It's
They don't get better, right?
no, they start going downhill after a while. That's a good record.
Yeah. Here's something a little more recent. Yeah, here we go. Do you listen to your records at home? Okay.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'm not. Sometimes I listen to them in the car, you know.
Yeah.
But
This is swing, man. The Warren Vacher.
is that what this is?
Yeah. It was called Horn of Plenty. Does that ring a bell now? Okay.
Trying to think who's playing saxophone.
I can't remember. Houston Person, I think.
Is he on that one?
Yeah, I think so. And Joel Helene?
Delaney.
Yeah. Does it make you want to go listen to it?
That was a pretty good
It's
record.
nice. Yeah.
Is I Can't Get Started on that?
I believe so. There's
Yeah.
I think there's Strutting with Some Barbecue on there, arrangement of that, and nice session.
It did turn out pretty good.
Yeah. If you had advice for a young aspiring musician these days, trying to break into the jazz business, do you have anything you can offer?
Well, you have to have some kind of direction, of course. You have to know what you really want to do, because there's no place to even practice your craft. There are no clubs for local musicians, not many. How do you learn how to play? In school, like at the Berklee School of Music, or some other kind of conservatory. And it gets tough. I don't know what to tell. I've thought about it myself. If I were just starting now, what would I do? What would be my approach? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm discouraging anyone, but I'd have to think long and hard about it. I really would, and being honest about it. What direction would I go in? Well, I want to be a teacher, an educator, a film writer, or whatever. I don't know.
Some guys end up doing all of those in order to make ends meet, I guess.
I know. I don't know. I wish I had the answer. I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I'd even get into this business if I were just starting. I don't think so.
Right.
There was so much happening when I started. Oh man, it was live. It was thrilling. Just even in, at the beginning when I was in high school, it was great. I couldn't wait to get out to even go to the strip joints and play. But I don't know, things are really changed.
Yes. Well, you came a long way from the strip joints.
I hope so.
You did a real long way, and I really enjoyed talking with you today. And I wish you the best, and I hope that we're in town sometime when you're playing somewhere.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I guess I'll never be up your way. You
never know.
live in Utica?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right outside Utica. Not a lot of clubs there either, unfortunately.
I'm trying to think the last time I never worked in Utica, but Rochester. Yeah.
Rochester and Syracuse you might have been. I
Right.
think I told you I saw you in Syracuse
Dinkler.
with Major Holly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with Major up there at some other place too, right off of the thruway. I forgot the name of it. Rochester, yeah, there used to be a club called Backstage.
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think so. And there was the Pithod Room.
There, yeah, the Pithod.
Yeah.
I remember that. I worked at Pithod long ago.
Right. Well, thanks for your time today. Been most appreciated.
Pleasure indeed. I enjoyed it.